when the impossible becomes reality. There are moments in life when the line between tragedy and miracle is so thin that it defies all logic and human understanding. Imagine a family traveling peacefully, unaware that within seconds they would face a situation that, by all statistics and probabilities, should have resulted in certain death. And then, against all odds, they all survive. Not only do they survive, but they emerge practically unscathed from total destruction that even left experienced rescuers in shock. These are not just stories of luck or coincidence. They are accounts that raise profound questions about spiritual protection, divine purpose, and the mysterious intervention that some call a miracle. When doctors, firefighters, and accident investigators, professionals trained to coldly assess evidence, declare that a survival is statistically impossible or an absolute miracle, we are faced with something that transcends conventional explanations. What makes these stories even more impressive is the recurring pattern. Entire families who should have perished, but were preserved in ways that defy scientific understanding. Completely destroyed cars where the occupants walk away. Falls from heights that are normally fatal, yet result in minimal or no injuries. Accidents where the force of impact should have been lethal, yet something inexplicable protected those who were at the center of tragedy. Welcome to the portal of the unknown, where we explore extraordinary stories that defy the laws of probability and make us question what truly governs our destiny. If you are seeking inspiring accounts of miraculous survival, inexplicable spiritual protection, and stories that restore faith in the possibility of the impossible, you are in the right place. Subscribe now and activate the bell so you don't miss any story that can transform your perspective on life, destiny, and the divine. The Tesla family case: impossible fall, inexplicable survival. One of the most impressive cases recently documented involves a family who survived after their Tesla plunged off a cliff in California. The vehicle fell from a height equivalent to a multi-story building, crashing in an area known as Devil's Slide, a stretch notorious for its extremely high fatality rate in accidents. According to authorities, the family's survival is an absolute miracle due to the extremely low survival rate of accidents in the area. The head rescuer, with decades of experience recovering victims of fatal accidents in that region, told the press, "We go there all the time to rescue cars that fall off the cliff, and they never survive." This was an absolute miracle. Inside the completely destroyed vehicle were not only adults, but also two small children. Logic and the rescuers' experience suggested they would only find bodies. Instead, they found a frightened but alive family. The children, who by the physics of the impact should have suffered fatal trauma, had only superficial injuries. What makes this case even more intriguing is the nature of the terrain. The fall involved multiple impacts against sharp rocks, violent rollovers, and finally a landing on rocks at the edge of the ocean. Each individual element should have been fatal. The combination of all of them should have made survival not only improbable, but impossible. Yet the entire family survived, leaving even accident investigators perplexed as to how it could have happened. Is this story giving you chills? Leave your like now and share in the comments if you or someone you know has ever experienced inexplicable protection in moments of extreme danger. Your stories could inspire thousands of people. The 2% girl, defying medical odds. The story of Laura, a girl who had only a 2% chance of surviving a truck accident, is another powerful testimony of survival against all medical odds. Laura's parents celebrate not only her initial survival, but her full recovery as a little warrior who defied every medical prognosis. The accident itself was devastating. The collision with a high-speed truck caused multiple traumas that, according to the medical team, were incompatible with life in the vast majority of cases. Doctors, being honest with the family, explained that statistically Laura had only a 2% chance of surviving the first 24 hours. Even if she survived, the likelihood of severe permanent damage was extremely high. Faced with this devastating prognosis, the family turned to faith and prayer. Entire communities mobilized, creating prayer chains that spread across cities and states. While medical science did everything in its power with cutting-edge technology and professional expertise, something else was at work, something that the doctors themselves would later recognize as extraordinary. Laura not only survived the critical first 24 hours, but began a recovery that doctors described as beyond any reasonable medical expectation. Complications that were expected never materialized. Brain functions that seemed compromised returned. The girl, who should have been left with severe permanent damage, began to show neurological recovery that surprised the entire medical team. Today, the family celebrates each milestone as living proof that the 2% chance turned into 100% miracle. Spiritual protection more than coincidence? Amid the horror of a collective tragedy, the burning question arises in the minds of many. Why do some survive while others don't? This question becomes even more disturbing when examining cases where all physical factors pointed to certain death. Yet the person or family not only survived, but escaped relatively unscathed. The scientific perspective tries to explain these events through variables such as body position at the moment of impact, force distribution, structural characteristics of the vehicle, and a series of fortuitous factors aligning perfectly to allow survival. Statisticians might argue that in a universe with billions of events, some unlikely combinations will inevitably occur. However, those who experience these impossible survivals often report something more: a protective presence, a sense that it wasn't their time, or even direct spiritual experiences during the moment of danger. Many describe a strange calm that enveloped them at the moment of impact, as if something was cushioning not only their bodies, but also their consciousness from the full trauma of the event. Witnesses and rescuers also report inexplicable phenomena. Firefighters describe finding victims in positions that shouldn't have been possible if they had endured the full impact. Accident investigators find patterns of destruction that make no sense, as if selective forces had protected certain areas while destroying others. Some survivors report that other passengers who perished seemed to have absorbed impacts that otherwise would have struck those who lived. A mysterious redistribution of forces that defies physical explanation. Do you believe in spiritual protection, or do you think these are just statistical coincidences? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with someone who needs hope and inspiration today. Your words could make all the difference in someone's life. 7 months after a serious accident on BR-277, a Brazilian family continues to regard their survival as a true miracle. The accident involved multiple high-speed vehicles, resulting in massive destruction and, tragically, several deaths. The family in question was at the very epicenter of the impact, inside a vehicle that became completely unrecognizable after being crushed between trucks. Photographs of the accident show what remained of the car, a twisted mass of metal where it is difficult to even identify that it was once a vehicle. Traffic accident experts, upon analyzing the wreckage, categorically stated that anyone inside that vehicle should have died instantly. The force of the impact, the compression of the cabin, and the multiple crushing points left no room for survival. Yet when rescuers finally managed to access the wreckage, they found the entire family alive. Injured, of course, but conscious and able to communicate. Even more impressive, no member of the family suffered permanent disabling injuries. Broken bones healed, tissues regenerated, functions restored. 7 months later, in an emotional interview, the family shared their memories of the accident and recovery. They described a series of coincidences that they now see as providential. The exact position in which they were seated, the milliseconds of timing that determined the angle of impact, even seemingly trivial decisions made hours earlier that, in retrospect, appear to have been crucial to their survival. Even more significant is the family's spiritual testimony. All members report a unified experience of divine presence during the accident. It was not panic or terror they felt in the moment of imminent impact, but a strange peace and certainty that they would be protected. This collective experience, independently shared by each member before they spoke to one another after the accident, is what they consider the most convincing evidence of divine intervention. One of the most compelling aspects of these impossible survival stories is when experienced professionals, doctors, firefighters, paramedics, accident investigators, people trained to assess situations objectively and who have seen thousands of similar accidents, openly declare that what they witnessed was a miracle. These are not naive or superstitious individuals. They are professionals who deal with trauma and tragedy regularly, who know survival statistics intimately, and who have developed a sober, realistic perspective on what is possible and what is not. When such professionals abandon their technical explanations and resort to the language of the miraculous, it is worth paying attention. A rescue chief with decades of experience declaring he had never seen survivors in similar accidents. A trauma doctor who treats hundreds of severe accident victims annually, stating that a particular patient's survival defies all reasonable medical expectations. An air crash investigator admitting he cannot explain how someone survived when all variables indicated certain fatality. These professional testimonies carry weight precisely because they come from people who normally rely on science, statistics, and objective analysis. When their training and expertise cannot provide adequate explanations and they feel compelled to use terms such as miracle, impossible, or divine, we are faced with something that transcends the ordinary. We are exploring mysteries that defy explanation. If you are enjoying this content, don't forget to check out our full playlist on miracles and divine protection here at the Portal of the Unknown. Click the card now and continue this inspiring journey with us. The pattern of inexplicable protections. When analyzing multiple cases of impossible survivals, intriguing patterns emerge that suggest something more than mere random luck. First, there is often a spiritual preparation or moment of prayer before the event. Families who prayed regularly together, individuals who had recently renewed commitments of faith, or even specific prayers made moments before the accident. Second, many survivors report an altered sense of time during the event. Time seems to slow down, allowing a clarity of thought impossible under such circumstances. Some describe making split-second decisions that saved lives, decisions that, in later analysis, seemed to require more processing time than was physically available. Third, there are often elements of almost in the scenario. The accident almost happened 5 minutes earlier in a worse location. The family almost took another route. There were almost more passengers in the vehicle. These almosts accumulate in such a way that, in retrospect, they seem more like careful orchestration than random coincidences. Fourth, the post-survival transformations are deep and lasting. Families who experience these impossible protections often report fundamental changes in their priorities, values, and spiritual practices. These are not temporary changes driven by the emotion of the moment, but life reorientations that persist for years after the event. Many become vocal witnesses, feeling a responsibility to share their stories, to encourage and inspire others. Faith tested and strengthened. For many families, the experience of surviving the impossible does not eliminate future difficulties, but provides an unshakable anchor of faith that sustains them through subsequent challenges in life. The vivid memory of having been protected when they should have died becomes a spiritual reference point to which they return repeatedly. Interestingly, some families report that the period immediately after their miraculous survival was paradoxically difficult. There was pressure to understand the why they were spared when others in the same accident perished. There was survivor's guilt, questions about purpose and responsibility, and the challenge of living in a way worthy of such a dramatically granted second chance. These spiritual and emotional struggles are an integral part of the full story. The miraculous protection is not the end, but the beginning of a journey to discover meaning and purpose. Many families find that their survival has given them a platform and a message, not only to share their specific story, but to offer hope and encouragement to others facing their own impossibilities. The faith that emerges from these experiences is often more robust and less naive than before. It is a faith tested in the crucible of imminent mortality and forged in the furnace of pain and recovery. It is not a faith that expects immunity from suffering, but a faith that trusts in divine presence and purpose even and especially in the most desperate circumstances. Living as those saved from the impossible. The stories of families who survived the impossible confront us with fundamental questions about destiny, free will, divine intervention, and the purpose of our lives. They challenge both the rigid skepticism that refuses to consider anything beyond the material and the naive credulity that sees miracles in every fortuitous event. These are not just inspiring stories meant to make us feel good, though they are certainly inspiring. They are testimonies that invite us to seriously consider the possibility that more is at work in our world than we can see, measure, or fully explain. That protection can come from sources beyond human precautions, that some events transcend probability and enter the realm of the providential. For those who have experienced these impossible protections, there is no doubt. They carry in their bodies the scars of impacts that should have been fatal, and in their spirits the unshakable certainty that they were spared for a reason. Their lives become living testimonies that the impossible can become reality when the divine intervenes. And for us who hear these stories, they offer us hope that even when we face our own impossibilities, whether physical, emotional, relational, or spiritual, there is the possibility of protection, preservation, and purpose that transcends our seemingly insurmountable circumstances. Which of these stories touched your heart the most? Do you have your own testimony of inexplicable protection? Share it in the comments. Your story may be exactly what someone needs to hear today to keep going. Never underestimate the power of a shared testimony. If these stories inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the Portal of the Unknown and activate the bell. Every week we bring new accounts of miraculous survival, divine protection, and stories that restore faith in the impossible. In our next video, we will explore documented cases of miraculous healings that defied terminal medical diagnoses. Doctors said it was impossible, but faith and prayer changed everything. Don't miss this powerful journey through miracles that medicine cannot explain. See you in the next inspiring story here on the Portal of the Unknown.